Good afternoon, students. I am Dr. Shefali Mishra, Associate Professor, Department of Psychology, Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. With me today, I have Ms. Manisha Sharma, who is sign language interpreter, and she will accompany me in explaining the lecture to you. We were discussing in the last lecture about ethical issues and concerns in psychological research, and we discussed that there are various issues such as informed consent, rights of the participants, and well-being of the participants. And now we also examine another point which is very important, which is guaranteeing the welfare of research participants. Psychological research should yield enduring advantages for the physical and mental growth of the persons involved. Researchers must prioritize the ethical imperative of safeguarding the well-being and survival of the research participants, ensuring that their research does not inflict any harm upon them. In the event that the research participants experience any adverse effect during the experiment, it is the responsibility of the researcher to offer essential assistance and support, including medical intervention and fair financial restitution, to ensure that research subject is adequately compensated and protected. Now we will examine some of the ethical guidelines. Ethical guidelines serve as a set of principles and norms that direct researchers in the planning, execution, and documentation of research investigations. These guidelines are crucial for protecting the rights and well-being of participants and maintaining the integrity of the scientific process. There are 5 fundamental elements of ethical rules which are as follows. Number 1, general principle beneficence and non-malfeasance has some ethical guidelines which has to be followed by the psychologist, which relates to the endeavor of the psychologist to benefit their subjects or participants and take care to avoid causing harm. The second general principle is loyalty and responsibility, and the ethical guidelines that should be followed by psychologists is to establish trusting connections with their clients. Psychologists must be cognizant of their professional and scientific obligations to both society and their specific field of practice. Then we come to the general principle of integrity. Psychologists are required to uphold honesty and integrity in their execution of psychological research, teaching, as well as practice. We also have a general principle of justice, which means that this implies the principle of justice and fairness, which dictate that all individuals possess the right to benefit themselves of psychology, and it's imperative for psychologists to possess a comprehensive understanding of this principle and treat all individuals equally in the provision of their work and services. We have also to respect the autonomy and rights of individuals. So, psychologists hold high regard for self-esteem, value personal right to privacy, confidentiality, and the ability to make one's own decision of each individual. Researchers must respect the autonomy and right of individuals, ensuring that participation is voluntary and based on informed consent. There are several ethical dilemmas that the researcher may face when conducting a psychological research. Ethical dilemmas in psychological research arise when researchers encounter situations where ethical principles conflict or when the ethical course of action is unclear. These problems highlight the intricate relationship between the quest for knowledge and the obligation to safeguard the right and welfare of research participants. So, some of the ethical dilemmas are balancing privacy and scientific rigor. Due to technological improvements and the utilization of data analytics, researchers encounter ethical quandaries about the gathering and utilization of sensitive information. Striking a balance between maintaining scientific rigor and safeguarding participants' privacy is a continuous and persistent task. The need for cautious deliberation arises due to the possibility of data breaches and the potential disclosure of individuals' identities in studies that investigate sensitive subjects. Another ethical dilemma before the researcher is researching the vulnerable population. When conducting research on vulnerable groups such as children, individuals with cognitive disabilities, or those in institutional setting, ethical dilemmas are more prominent. Achieving a harmonious equilibrium between the scientific significance of the study and safeguarding vulnerable participants necessitates an increased ethical awareness. Then we come to post-study debriefing and participant well-being. Researchers also have ethical responsibility that goes beyond just collecting data. These responsibilities also include conducting post-study debriefing. It is essential to offer the participants a comprehensive elucidation of the study's objective and to answer any issues or misconceptions they may have. Nevertheless, ethical problems can emerge when participants encounter anguish during or after the investigation, requiring meticulous management of the equilibrium between scientific investigation and the welfare of the participants. The fourth ethical dilemma relates to navigating ethical review board decisions. Researchers may face ethical quandaries when interpreting and implementing judgment made by institutional review board or IRBs as popularly known as, or maybe with some other ethical committees. Decisions pertaining to the design of the study, recruitment of participants, and assessment of potential risks are subject to ethical examination. Researchers have the challenge of harmonizing their study objectives with the ethical criteria established by review boards. Now, we will come to another important aspect of psychological research, that is, selecting a sample for study. Research, as we have understood, is a quest guided by a primary research question that determines the extent and objective of the inquiry. Thorough preparation is therefore essential during the research process, as the researcher needs to determine the appropriate study approach, quantitative or qualitative, and how to recruit and access participants. Regardless of the selected approach, the inquiry is limited due to time constraints. This places restrictions on the researcher in terms of what can be realistically accomplished within a specific time frame and with the resources at hand. So, the initial pre-sampling effort establishes the scope of the data collection process. If conducting a census is not needed or impractical, utilizing a sample is the more suitable approach in psychological research. These scenarios are important when studying the entire group is impossible or even unnecessary at times. In such cases, researchers use a subgroup of the target population known as a sample. Creating a subgroup to collaborate with helps to make the research more feasible. The selection of a sample technique is highly contingent upon the objective and nature of investigation. This section will explore the fundamental principles in sampling, including several types of probability sampling and non-probability sampling techniques, along with their respective advantages and disadvantages. This section aims to facilitate the understanding about the selection of the most appropriate sampling techniques to ensure the smooth and effective completion of the research. Practically, every psychological study requires the process of sampling, which entails selecting a subset of individuals from the larger population of interest for investigation. We aim to investigate psychological research focused on large groups of individuals who share a common characteristics. The group in which we are interested in studying is referred to as the target population. Suppose you want to find out the average age of student in your class. There are two ways of doing this. Number one, you can contact all students in the class, find out the ages, add them up and divide by the number of students that you find the average. The second way is to select a few students, find out their ages, add these and divide by the number of students, that is few students you have contacted. This helps you in getting an estimate of the average age of the class. Sampling, therefore, is a process of selecting a few, that is called sample, from a bigger group, that is the sampling population, to become the basis for estimating or predicting the prevalence of an unknown piece of information, trait, situation, or outcome regarding a bigger group. So, sample, as we have understood, is a small set of cases a researcher selects from a large pool of and generalizes to the population. Sampling is the selection of particular cases for detailed examination, which is subsequently used to gain insights into a greater number of cases. The main purpose of sampling in quantitative studies is to provide a representative sample, which is a sample selected group of cases or units that accurately reflects the characteristic of interest in a broader collection of cases known as the population. By thoroughly analyzing the data in a sample, we can make accurate generalizations about its findings, assuming that the sampling was done appropriately. Quantitative research requires careful sampling to obtain representative samples. Probability sampling is a mathematical method based on probabilities and have the potential to be quite accurate. A well-planned probability sample is usually more accurate than trying to reach every person in a large population. Sampling method in qualitative research is different from those in quantitative research. Basically, they also serve distinct purposes. Indeed, the usage of the term sampling in qualitative research might lead to confusion, as it is commonly linked to quantitative studies only. In qualitative research, we rarely sample in a way that accurately represents the complete population in order to make statements about categories within the population. Instead, we do sampling in order to discover pertinent categories present in a limited number of cases. In quantitative sampling, cases or units are selected. Subsequently, we regard them as carriers of characteristics or features of the social world. A representative sample of cases or units is a true representation of a significantly larger population of cases or units. On the other hand, the purpose of the qualitative sample is to select specific characteristics or features of the social world. We will now examine in detail the concept of sampling in qualitative research. In qualitative research, the importance of sampling is little, as the primary objective of most qualitative research is to examine or depict the diversity within a given situation, phenomenon, or issue. Qualitative research does not aim to quantify or define the magnitude of this variance or diversity. You have the option to choose a single individual as your sample and define the specific objective of your investigation. A study that is based on information obtained from a single individual or conducted to describe a single event or circumstance is completely considered valid in qualitative research. Also, in qualitative research, the process of exploring diversity involves reaching a saturation point in terms of findings. This means that you continue interviewing or collecting information until you no longer find new information. When you discover that you are not acquiring any fresh data or the new knowledge is insignificant, it is assumed that you have reached the point of what is called saturation. Some researchers opt to employ non-probability designs when selecting a sample and continue collecting data until they have achieved saturation. The saturation point is a subjective judgment that you as a researcher will decide. The elements or features of our sample illuminate important dimensions or processes in a complex social life. We select a limited number of cases to offer clarity, insight, and understanding regarding matters of connections within the social realm. Qualitative sampling aims to enhance understanding of a larger process, relationship, or societal context. A sample provides us with useful insight or novel perspectives. The aspects serve to emphasize, improve, or enhance important characteristics or situation. Sampling allows us to get new theoretical perspectives, uncover unique characteristics of individuals or social environment, or enhance our understanding of complex circumstances, events, or connections. Qualitative research selects individuals to be researched based on their relevance to the research issue rather than their representativeness. Now we will examine some of the sampling strategies. We aim to minimize two possible sampling errors when we are doing sampling. The two common errors in sampling include conducting sampling carelessly or inappropriately and selecting a sample type that is not suitable for the purpose of the study. The initial error serves as a reminder to approach sampling with great attention to detail and a systematic approach. In order to prevent the occurrence of the second mistake, it is necessary to employ a sampling strategy that aligns with the specific purpose and data of our study. Sampling strategies can be categorized into two main types: a sample that effectively represents the entire population of cases and all other types of samples. The first strategy is primarily used in quantitative studies, while the latter is used in qualitative study. When our goal is to create sample data that accurately reflect numerous other cases that we are unable to directly examine, we can use two ways. First is the probability sample, which is the preferred method and is considered the gold standard for representative samples. Probability sample is based on almost 100 years of meticulous logic and practical mathematics, as well as numerous studies in natural science and quantitative social science. By employing a probability sampling technique, our aim is to provide a sample that is both accurate and representative while also having mathematically predictable errors. These errors refer to the precisely known probabilities of deviating from the intended target. This sample methodology is intricate, encompassing various subcategories. This sample technique is also a very simple method to conduct psychological research and recruit participants. Another simple method to generate a representative sample is by using a non-probability technique. While it may not be as precise, it can serve as a suitable alternative when obtaining a representative sample is not feasible due to factors such as cost, time constraints, or impracticality. Now we will talk about non-probability sampling techniques. For the purpose of creating a representative sample, we ideally prefer probability sampling. However, as we have examined, if that is not feasible, there are two non-probability alternatives: convenience and quota sample. Non-probability sampling means that the researchers subjectively choose the sample instead of random selection. So, not all population members have an equal chance of participating. Convenience sampling, a type of non-probability sampling, is often also referred to as incidental availability or haphazard sampling. This involved selecting cases based on their easy accessibility, convenience, or immediate availability. This particular sample type may be suitable for certain preliminary exploratory studies and qualitative research studies, especially when our objective is not to create a sample that accurately represents the population. However, this method often produces samples that are not representative, making it unsuitable for obtaining an accurate sample that truly represents the population. Choosing cases based on convenience can lead to a serious misrepresentation of features among the whole population. One might wonder why anyone would choose to employ this method given its inherent flaws and the potential for substantially biased sample result. The rationale is simple. Convenient samples are readily available, they are cost effective and very easy to acquire. Another possible factor could be the lack of knowledge among individuals regarding the proper methods for constructing a reliable and accurate representative sample. An example of this type of sampling is the person on the street interview conducted by television program. Television interviewers walk onto the street equipped with a camera and microphone to engage in conversations with a select group of individuals who are readily available for interview. These people walking by a television studio during daylight hours do not represent the entire population. While these samples may be interesting, they often produce data that is highly misleading. Thank you.